Hi, good evening. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you tonight. My name is Dr. Helgen. I'm an internal medicine specialist at Northfield Hospital and Clinics, and I've been there for about 14 years and been a part of our hospital's COVID response and all of that work that entailed. And I've had the good fortune of working with Dr. Jennifer Fischer, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hello, and thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Jennifer Fischer, and I've been on the COVID response team for the past 14 months. Usually I work in the emergency room where you may have seen me, and I also am the medical director for our ambulance service. So Northfield is my hometown, and it's a pleasure to be involved in something like this so that we can make the town even better. I think I'm looking and it looks like it's mostly women on this call. And that means that we are a group of people that can make anything work. So we right now we have had 3 vaccines to use as we're trying to fight COVID pandemic. And I'm sure all of you are aware that one of those vaccines, the Janssen, which is made by Johnson & Johnson, has been pulled. And so Dr. Helgen and I would like to address what's been in the news and perhaps offer some explanation for that happening. And we can also talk about the remaining vaccinations that we still have, the Pfizer and the Moderna. So Katie, let me turn it over to you and have you talk about the Janssen right now.
Yeah, that was extremely difficult news that we all saw yesterday, to hear that one of the main vaccinations was temporarily pulled from use. And what I kind of think about it is that it's really a sign that the regulators are trying to be very safe. You may have heard that there were 6 episodes of a rare blood clot seen in women. So it's been about 6 out of nearly 7 million cases. So we'll talk about how rare that really is in the scheme of things. And so the Janssen vaccination is on a temporary hold. Northfield Hospital has given out that vaccination without any problems, and we're just going to be waiting to see what the FDA decides it'll do. And so then, Jen, do you have any, things that you want to say about how rare these blood clots are?
Yeah, so the 6 people in 6.8 million doses of Johnson & Johnson developed a rare type of blood clot. When we usually think
Dr.
of
Fischer?
yes.
How many cases did you say again?
6.
Count. 6?
Mm-hmm.
6, okay.
Mm-hmm. Very rare. When we usually think of blood clots, we think of a blood clot in the leg or the arm. And these can occur for a number of reasons. And actually, with the use of birth control, being ill, and COVID itself, those are reasons that people develop blood clots in actually a higher amount than the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The reason that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine brought so much attention is because this was a type of brain clot that occurred around the brain. It's central venous sinus thrombosis is the long name. It's a long name, but what it really is blood clots that formed in the collecting areas on the outside of the brain. And then that blood is collected, it's oxygen depleted because your brain's already used up the oxygen. And then it drains back through the internal jugular veins of the neck and back into the heart. I've seen 2 in my 20 years at Northfield Hospital. It was associated with actually estrogen or hormone use, and smoking in both of those cases. And both of those cases were actually women as well. So, but it's a serious thing. One person died from this, and another of the 6 are critically or are considered critically ill at this point. Before I pulled up some odds of developing clots with COVID itself and with other medications. And then I've also pulled up some odds of everyday happenings. So before I get to that though, Katie, did I miss anything with explaining the Johnson & Johnson concerns?
No, and I think that the FDA will they met today, the advisory committee on vaccinations, and they decided to vote or have another meeting, and they said it would be in about 10 days. So I think we're all going to have a lot more information in the next week, 2 weeks on what's going to happen. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision myself, but I wouldn't be surprised if this vaccination ends up being back in the mix of things going on, because as lots of things, we have to decide the risk and the benefit. Is something worth doing? And what is the chance of having an ill effect? What's the chance of having a protective effect? And as we'll talk about with all of the vaccinations that are available to us, the benefit is really strong. It's really good. These are good vaccinations. They work very well, and we definitely recommend them. And in fact, I can say I've received vaccination myself. I know Dr. Fischer has. We've recommended it to our patients, to our family members, to our friends, and we do recommend them. So I think from the Johnson & Johnson perspective, I think we've kind of talked about, I think we've talked about the risk that, there is something possibly going on, and, something that's 1 in a million is pretty rare. What's the chance of getting COVID? It's pretty high. And if, so those are those, we're always going to be talking about risks and benefits.
So Dr. Helgen and I often joke, if there was a manual that you had to read before driving your car about the risk of death, you'd never leave your garage. So I actually pulled up some statistics, and in your lifetime, the odds of dying from a motor vehicle accident, I have 1 in 107. The odds of dying from a sting from a bee, a wasp, or a hornet is 1 in 60,000. And you still go outside and you still drive. And so it's like Katie, or like Dr. Helgen said, it's risks and benefits. And I have to say, after everything that we have seen in the last 14 months, where we've lost community members to COVID, where community members who survive COVID still have lingering effects, still deal with problems with thinking, still are chronically fatigued. I really am an advocate, and I recommend getting a vaccination.
I think Dr. Fischer and myself have really, we've seen things, we've seen sick patients, we've taken care of sick patients that have COVID. It's just a horrible disease. That old phrase, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, absolutely true. How it's disrupted all of our lives. But I suspect all of us here either know someone close to us or someone close to someone close to us who's either been very ill or perhaps died. And I just, I think the main thing is we want that misery to end. And the way that the misery is going to end is going to be through vaccination and keeping people safe so that they can go about their lives and that they can go about their work and all the things that we want to enjoy with family and all the things we do and that kind of thing. A year plus into this, I still see patients who have chronic lung problems, who can't smell, can't taste a year later. That really reduces enjoyment in life. And then this is not even talking about the patients that I've lost from COVID who aren't even with us anymore. So, you know, I really looking forward to talking about your concerns about vaccinations or any questions. Dr., do you think we maybe should talk about Pfizer and Moderna? Dr. Fischer, should we?
Sure, that sounds good. The Pfizer and the Moderna are the vaccinations that we currently carry. I would say we're probably about 2/3 or maybe 3/4 Pfizer, because we have a deep freeze at the hospital, and these medications have to be stored at really, really low temperatures. We do get Moderna in occasionally. As far as people asking me, which one should I get? And the answer is always whichever one you can get first. They have a similar efficacy profile, or they have a similar success rate. They are not 100% effective at preventing you from getting COVID. But if you do happen to get COVID, you really aren't as sick as you would be. And they have an extremely high protection rate against going in the hospital and against death. So this was a bit of a surprise. All those vaccinations that we get as kids that we think are wonderful actually probably only have a 52 to 70% rate of effectiveness. And this is much higher than that. These vaccines are actually better than the ones we've been using for years and years and years. And that is amazing. And we're so happy about that. The side effects are about the same. And Katie, I'll let you talk about the side effects of getting a vaccination.
Oh, sure, yeah. So Pfizer and Moderna are basically just an injection right into your arm of basically a protein material. So there's no preservatives, there's no egg particles, there's no other material whatsoever. It's just basically kind of a slippery or fat-like solution called a lipid solution with some protein. And when that's injected into your arm, it produces an immune response, which is what we want, which eventually will make antibodies and cells that will react, so that if you're exposed to COVID in your, respiratory tract, mucous membranes, you'll have all these good antibodies at the ready. Now, obviously, when your immune system kicks up, which we want it to do, you may have a slight reaction to it. And what I can speak from experience is that I felt after my injections, I felt like I was coming down with something for a day or two, felt a little achy. I had some low-grade fever, basically below 100 degrees, and it was gone within a day or two. At this point, I can say that I know hundreds of people that have had the vaccine, and it ranges from nothing, like no symptoms, felt fine, not anything, to needing to take a day or two off of work because you felt achy and you needed to be in bed with some acetaminophen or Tylenol. So there's very rare chances of severe side effects. That's seen extremely rarely. So Pfizer and Moderna just seem to be more of kind of an inconvenience. The good news from these vaccines is that when they were approved right before Christmas time here in the United States for emergency use, we almost couldn't believe the effectiveness that these were. I actually felt it was like a Christmas miracle. That's all I can say. I remember the hospital got our first doses. It was December 23rd. Mm-hmm. And we were hearing that Pfizer was 95% reduced your risk of getting COVID by 95%. That is so amazing. That is better than any vaccine that we've ever had in the United States before. And then 2 weeks later, the Moderna vaccination came out, and it is 92% risk reduction in getting COVID. And it was like so exciting. So these are the two vaccines that we've been using the most. It's a little bit annoying because you have to come back for a second shot 3 to 4 weeks later. but the protection is really worth it. And within 2 weeks of receiving your second shot, you have that really amazing protection. It's 100% protection against death from COVID. It's pretty amazing that internationally, no person who received a COVID vaccination has yet died from COVID-19 disease. That's certainly better than any vaccination I can ever imagine. You know, you get the flu shot, sometimes you still get the flu.
Dr. Helgen, can I just
Yes.
ask you, what did you say about no one dying from the COVID?
No one who's received a COVID vaccination has died from COVID.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that's what I heard.
So I guess I sound pretty excited about Moderna and Pfizer because I am. I mean, these vaccinations, these two are amazing. They're incredibly safe. We've been giving them now worldwide in the United States for many months. In the United States, approximately, well, in Minnesota, 43% of the state is vaccinated as of today. I was just checking on the website. So we've got a lot of experience in the past 4 months with these vaccinations.
So at the hospital, we've probably given, I'm thinking around 13,000 at this point. We give between 500 and 650 every time we have a clinic. As soon as we get the vaccine in, we set up the clinic, and it's been about 2 to 3 times a week. So we're very happy that our little hospital in the middle of the cornfield has gotten these vaccinations. And now we're just trying to get them out to the community and get people on the wait list, so that as soon as we have vaccines, we can move you from the wait list and give you the appointment. I want to just go through briefly how that all works. We do give the vaccination in the hospital, and basically using one of our hallways. When you walk in, and the gift shop is right in front of you, and then we have set up our meeting room and our sleep study center as the place where we actually do the injections. Before that, we have help. So when you come in, there's always paperwork, right? Always paperwork. And it can be somewhat confusing. And sometimes you come with questions. You're not entirely sure you want the vaccination. And so we have pieces for everybody who comes in. We have people who can answer your questions right on the spot. Once your paperwork is done, which doesn't take very long, we get you in, you get your injection, and then you come down to the monitoring area. And that's where I am. I'm in the monitoring area. Now, Dr. Helgen said that reactions to these medications are very rare, and she is absolutely correct. But we have a monitoring area where we have you sit with us for 15 minutes and just to make sure that you feel well. And then when you're done, you're right out the door, and we walk you back to the parking lot. Occasionally, we do have people who will wait 30 minutes. Those are people that have a history of anaphylaxis or the severe allergic reactions. So anaphylaxis is an allergic reaction where your lips may swell, your tongue swells, you have difficulty breathing. And we treat that with a injection of epinephrine. And so in the monitoring area, there's 2 of us with epinephrine, just in case. But mostly it's just an opportunity to visit. We're there to answer any questions. And everyone has done very well. My number one reaction has been people feeling lightheaded and dizzy. And when I inquire if they've had breakfast that morning, almost all of them tell me no. Almost all of them. And it's usually the younger folks. And so that's what you would expect when you would come in for an injection. And of course, Charisse is there. Rachel Odette, who many of you know, is also helping us with interpretation. But we're all there to answer your questions, and we're all there to make sure that you feel right about getting the vaccination. Have I missed anything?
The only thing with the vaccination at the hospital is that the vaccination is free of charge.
Yes. Yep.
And that's based on any place in the United States, the vaccination is, COVID-19 vaccination is free of charge.
Yep. You should never receive a bill for that. So I will clarify, if you have insurance, we do bill for the administration of the vaccine, but you will never see a bill. That only goes to insurance. You will not have a copay. And if somebody doesn't have insurance, it's not billed at all. You should never, ever be asked for money. One of the things I wanted to clarify, I am asked often, how young can a person be to get the vaccination? And the Pfizer vaccination is approved right now for people 16 and older. The Moderna vaccination is approved for 18 and older. I do suspect, and I bet Dr. Helgen agrees with me on this, that we will probably be seeing that vaccine approval move to the age of 12. They've been doing some studies, and it looks like that's what's going to happen, but not right now. But so for right now, 16 and older.
Yeah, so right now, people who have access to the Northfield Hospital website, we have a wait list, and we are asking anybody 16 and older to get on our wait list. And then as we have vaccine come in, we contact people on the wait list, and kind of based on how much we have and what age and categories we're working through. Eventually, and very soon, every single person who wants a vaccination will be able to get it. We've made so much progress in just a couple months in those thousands and thousands of doses.
Okay, the first question, Dr. Fischer and Dr. Helgen, is, it said, people who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, how long can they calculate possibly getting a blood clot?
That's a good question. So Dr. Helgen, correct me if I'm wrong, that the blood clots typically appeared between days 6 through 13. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, everything was under 3 weeks or less after receiving the vaccine. I think the information also to tell people that if people I hear or have or know people who've received the Johnson & Johnson vaccination, if it's been more than 3 weeks, it's very unlikely you'll have any symptoms like this. The other thing is that these blood clot symptoms produce pretty dramatic symptoms, severe headache or abdominal pain or limb swelling. So if you have a mild headache after vaccination, that's really common. I know when I got my Pfizer vaccination, I had a bad headache. So for mild symptoms, you do not need to seek medical care. It's more for those severe symptoms. And again, we're talking about something that right now is about 1 in a million chance of happening. So the good news is that therefore it'd be unlikely it would happen to most people. So obviously if something was different, of course, we'd want you to touch base with your doctor.
In Northfield, we have not had any complications of this nature. We have not had large amounts of Johnson & Johnson, but we have given out some, and thus far, no problems at all.
We had another question that had actually come in earlier. Are side effects different for people who have had COVID?
That is a good question. So there was some theory that if you had had COVID and had the antibodies, and then we gave you your injection to stimulate your immune system, that your side effects were a little more robust. Same side effects, but maybe a little bit achier, maybe a little bit of a fever. But I haven't seen any concrete data. That was all anecdotal stories, but I haven't seen any concrete data. We do know that even if somebody has had COVID, that giving the vaccination has been protective against the new variant strains, the variant strains that are much more contagious and are spreading at an alarming rate. So in the hospital, our employees, if they had COVID or their family members, we still suggested and gave the vaccination.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, honestly, it would really suck if you had COVID and then you got the variant, right? Because some of these variants do not, you do not have protection if you've already had a full set of the disease. So that would sound like torture to me. So we are strongly recommending that everybody get to, the full series of whatever vaccine you start to have protection against these horrible variants. Even if you've had COVID, please come get the vaccine.
So the next question, is it okay to take ibuprofen after you have your vaccine, and how soon can you take it?
Yeah, I can address that one. That's a conversation that we have in the monitoring area about 600 times a day. And I know there was some early information being spread, I think on Facebook and maybe Good Morning America, about not taking Tylenol or ibuprofen. And essentially that is because those medications weren't studied with the vaccination. Since that time, we have found no problems taking Tylenol or ibuprofen. If you want, you could take the medication as soon as you get the vaccination, but medications are medications. So what I'm usually advising is that only take it if you need it. But they're quite safe if you need it for body aches, headache, or fever.
Yeah, I'll share my own story. I got my second Pfizer vaccination. This was early because we were, as physicians and people at the hospital, able to get some of the first shots in Minnesota. And it was, I don't know, January 10th or something. And 12 hours after my second shot, I woke up with a horrible fever, muscle aches, and I decided to tough it out. I don't know why. I just decided I was going to just do a living experiment to see what it was really like. And, it wasn't terrible. And then all of a sudden, about 10 hours later, I remembered something called Aleve, which is just naproxen. It's like ibuprofen. And you would think as a doctor, I would think about taking it. And all of a sudden I thought, what are you doing? Take the medications. I took some Aleve, and honestly, it was like a miracle. So I would say, yeah, if you're having symptoms, take some of these common over-the-counter medications. It's there, they're there to help us. I wouldn't worry about taking it before your vaccination or anything like that. Just see how you're doing. And if you're feeling ill afterwards, you have a little fever or something, take something.
What happens if you have complications right after receiving the vaccine and it needs medical attention? What covers that service? I think they're talking about billing.
Well, I can talk about the treatment. So if you were with me, if that emergent reaction, anaphylaxis, were to occur, I would give you a medication called epinephrine in the monitoring area, and then we would move to the emergency room because I would want to continue to monitor you. We would also use steroids, and we would use epinephrine again if needed. If you had a severe reaction, you would likely be in the emergency room for an additional 4 to 6 hours, just to make sure that those symptoms didn't return. As far as billing, I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry, I would assume it would be emergent care, just as if you were in a bad car crash, or somebody broke their leg and came into the emergency room. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
But Dr. Fischer, maybe speak to how rare that happens. that
Uh,
someone would need an emergency room, actually, would,
extremely
Right.
rare. And that's why we've staffed our monitoring area. If I'm not available, I have another ER physician in that area. And essentially, I want to prevent anybody from having to go to the emergency room. I can look at, the area that received the vaccination. I can make sure that you're breathing okay. I can make sure that your vital signs are okay so that you don't have to have an emergency room visit. I have, in 13,000 doses, I have moved 3 people from monitoring into the emergency room because I was concerned. And those 3 people did well and went home in the same day.
and Dr. Fisher, if a person receives care after the vaccine and they didn't have to go to the emergency room, say you provided some care for them, I'm assuming that care, of course, is of no charge.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. No charge at all. I do write names down so that if you're coming back for your second vaccination, I need to make sure that we should give it to you. And then I have you sit near me, kind of like a teacher's pet. So just so that I can keep a closer eye on you. And again, most of the reactions that I'm seeing are people just feeling a little dizzy, lightheaded. And I've had a few people just start to cry, and they tell me it's because they were so afraid coming in, and it's just a relief stage. I've had a few people get real shaky because they have a history of anxiety, and every one of them has done just fine and very well. And we'll sit and talk to you as long as you need to, and you can stay past your 15 minutes. I had one gentleman an elderly gentleman who lives alone, and he decided to stay with us for 2 hours. Every time I'd come by to dismiss him, he'd put a piece of paper up so I couldn't see his face. Say, Sandy, there's one thing we neglected to touch on, and we talked about the 1 in a million chance of a blood clot with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But we didn't talk about the risk of blood clot with, say, birth control pills. And that risk in a million people, about 750 people will develop a blood clot with birth control. If somebody smokes, your risk is about almost 1,800 or 1,800 people in a million. And if you have COVID, your risk of a blood clot is 165,000 in a million. So you can see that the Johnson & Johnson 1 in a million, but birth control pills themselves, 750 in a million. Oh, I know those are a lot of numbers, but I just want to put it in perspective, the risk associated with the vaccine. And I do expect it'll be back in use in not very long. And so I just want people to understand that we have higher risk of blood clots and a higher risk of death in everyday things that we do. It's definitely worth looking into to make sure that this is safe, but I do expect it will be determined that it is a safe medication.
Can people who are taking medication for allergies receive the vaccine?
Yes, the answer is absolutely. The only people that there are cautions for receiving the vaccine are someone who's had an anaphylaxis to their first shot, or someone who's had anaphylaxis to something called PEG, which is a common ingredient in certain laxative products. So it's a really rare allergy. So if you have allergies to anything else, it means we're going to take a closer watch at you, and Dr. Fisher and her team will watch you maybe for a little longer, but absolutely no concerns about getting the vaccine.
And you can continue those medications. You don't have to stop your allergy medications in order to come and get the vaccination. You can continue those medications.
Doctors, is it recommended to have the vaccine if you have a cold or symptoms of COVID?
No. So the reason for that is that when you come into our facility, while we do everything possible to keep everybody safe, wearing a mask, keeping 6 feet apart, if you have an active cold or any other illness, we don't want you coming in. So if you happen to get COVID, we want you to wait your 14 days of quarantine before you'd come in.
And
One
then
moment.
come get the vaccination.
She had heard at a conference that there was a number of perhaps 30% that stop having their symptoms. And she's referring to their long-term COVID symptoms, that the vaccine actually helps that. Have you seen that same percentage?
I can speak to this a little bit. I have not seen that same percentage, but I'm hoping that that is the case. We don't know what's going to happen with long COVID, and that's basically a syndrome of people who have chronic fatigue and brain fog and just feel miserable, even though their infection has passed long, long ago. And when people who had long COVID started getting their COVID vaccination so that they would have protection against the variants, there is a group that did feel better. In fact, there were some case reports of people who felt that they had been cured. And so, you know, I hope that that is the case, and I hope we keep seeing it. There was initial kind of unofficial study that was done just by asking people on a long COVID blog if they'd received their vaccination and how they were doing. And that was probably where that 30% number came from. About 30% felt a lot better, 30% didn't feel better, and 30% weren't sure or were slightly worse. So in general, people who have long COVID definitely should get vaccinated, because if they got COVID again from a variant, I can't imagine how bad their long COVID syndrome could possibly be. And if they do happen to feel better, like many, many people are, how great that is.
Do people with kidney issues, can they receive the vaccine?
Absolutely. I'm a physician who is in internal medicine. So I have patients who have complex and chronic illnesses, including chronic kidney problems of many types. And absolutely, people with chronic kidney disease, kidney problems, honestly, everybody should get the vaccine. But if you have chronic medical problems, we really want to get it into you as quickly as possible so you can start having that protection. And that includes chronic lung disease, immune problems, cancer, chronic heart problems, anything that might affect your immune system or your body's ability to heal and take care of itself. So great question. Yep. Anybody, there are very few people that shouldn't get the vaccine. In fact, I have trouble thinking of even a few of those, because it's pretty much open to anybody. Chronic illness, you get that protection.
I just wanted to add, I agree with Dr. Helgen. One of the things, if you know of somebody who is unable to come to the hospital, we could come out to give the vaccination in somebody's home. Ideally, it's done in our hospital, but if that person cannot come in, if you know somebody, would you let us know? Because we have a list, and we can talk to that person, and we can come to them. We want everyone who is eligible to receive the vaccination to get it.
What if you are someone who has the virus but's asymptomatic and goes to get the vaccine? What happens?
Nothing. You'll have double protection. Yeah, you're right. There's so many people who end up with COVID and don't know it. And on one side of the coin, it's lucky not to have those symptoms. But on the flip side, you may have exposed 100 people in that 10 days that you're contagious. But that is the reason why when you come to the hospital, even if you don't have any symptoms, we still treat everybody as if they have a disease, right? We all have our masks. We're actually giving surgical masks to you when you walk in. You'll come in with your regular cloth mask, but we give you another one. We make sure that people are 6 feet apart, and we limit your time as much as possible while you're in the hospital. We don't want people to congregate together. I've had to break up some conversations, and I feel awful about that. But people, when they talk, they tend to want to be close together. And so I've had to break that up. But absolutely, I suspect that we've probably administered COVID vaccinations to probably 3 to 5% of people, and they probably had COVID at that very moment.
You know, it was so great answering your questions, but, you know, and I hope that, you know, you guys all get the vaccine. We want to make that as possible for all of you. You know, if there's any things that you heard, you know, people are talking, the internet is full of things. Everybody's talking. If there's any thing that is keeping you from getting the vaccine, I think we would love to hear those from you so that we could help talk through some of these issues or perhaps provide our perspective. I guess maybe, well, if people want to either unmute or put it in the chat, I suppose I realized that we didn't address a question that did come in from the pre-questions, Sandy. It was the question about fertility.
Please, yeah.
And so I really want to speak to this because that is a question that we get a lot. And I will just say, you know, strongly that COVID-19 vaccination does not affect fertility either in men or women or in young adults. There is no vaccine in the history of humankind that has ever affected fertility. So I do so much reading and research to try to be on top of it and to be a resource for my patients. And I have been doing a lot of reading about, and there's been a lot of research into where this myth came about. And in fact, we know that this has been a myth that's been present, you know, in the world for about 30 years. It actually started with the Taliban, if you can believe it. So I just think that this myth has gained a lot of traction and everybody's talking about it. But I just want to you know, strongly state there is no connection with fertility and vaccination, and there isn't here.
In fact, there is now some studies that prove if you are pregnant and you get the COVID vaccination, the antibodies are present in the baby when it's born. So your baby is born with some protection against COVID. It's a wonderful thing. So initially we had a lot of pregnant women hold off on the vaccination, but now I am seeing a lot of pregnant individuals come through our clinic, and so very happy to see that. Pregnancy and complications from pregnancy increase if somebody actually does get COVID. So the vaccination is very important in pregnant individuals.
I think you stated this at the very beginning, but someone is asking what is in the vaccines?
Oh.
What are the components?
Yeah, no problem. So the vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna is a protein called RNA, and it's in a kind of a slippery solution to make it injectable so it can go into your arm. And that solution is basically kind of it's called a lipid. It's kind of like a fatty layer, so it can actually get out of the syringe and into your arm. There's absolutely no preservatives, and part of the reason that these vaccinations have to be at these super low freezer temperatures is because there's no preservatives and the makeup of this protein. So there's no preservatives, there's no eggs or egg allergy, anything like that. There's no, microscopic particles.
And there's no microchips, which I've actually been asked about.
Right. There's nothing like that.
Oh, is there a plan in place to talk with groups of people who are afraid to receive the vaccine? Kind of what we're doing now, but they're just wondering if there's a plan in place, because it sounds like in the community, there's several people that are still afraid to receive the vaccine.
So we're trying to get the word out, and you'll see Betsy Spethman is on with us, and Betsy has been working long hours and overtime trying to make sure that our message on the Northfield Hospital website is accurate, addresses questions. A lot of times it's more of a one-on-one conversation that will alleviate somebody's fears. And so truly, I think that Dr. Helgen and I would be happy to talk to anyone that is fearful of the vaccination. In a group like what we're participating in tonight, we were hoping that that we would alleviate fears. But to piggyback on Dr. Helgen's last comments, we want to know what the barriers are. We assume we know what people's fears might be, but it might be something completely different. And so if you could provide us with information that so that we can make sure that we're providing the correct data, if that is what is needed, or we can address whatever fear there might be, we want to do that. So as far as an overall plan, I think all of us physicians are just trying to get out there and talk to anybody who will listen.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that, as you can see, you know, we're just regular people who live right in the same community as all of us. And I think maybe our perspective is slightly different because we've really seen face to face how bad COVID is, you know, taking care of patients who are this sick, seeing them at all stages of the disease, you know, and that was a huge part of me getting my vaccination was I saw how bad it is. Of course, I also don't want to die, you know, that's also why I'm getting the vaccine, and then I don't want to spread it to my family. So I would never recommend something that I wasn't willing to do myself, and I wasn't, you know, advising all my family members and friends to do. So that's just kind of my own personal perspective on this.
Thank you, doctors. Go ahead, Betsy.
Andy, I just want to, first of all, thank Dr. Fischer and Dr. Helgen and Cherise, who's probably the hardest working person in the room right now, for all of your help tonight. I'd like to share just a little bit of information about our wait list. It is available in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Somali, Vietnamese, and Mandarin. It's open to everybody 16 and older who lives in Minnesota and Wisconsin. It will ask for health questions, and it will ask for essential worker information. That helps us put people, rank people in order of risk. So we offer appointments based on risk factors, including age, health conditions, and essential workers. So the reason we're asking for that information is so we know the risk level of individuals, so we can put them in the order of priority to offer appointments. I also want to mention that our website the entire website can be translated into Spanish. At the bottom of the website on every page, there's a little button that offers you a choice of language. You can choose English or Spanish. So all of the information that is on our COVID vaccine information page, there's a lot of information about common questions and some answers there. All of that information is available in Spanish. You can translate the entire website at the bottom of the page. Thanks.
Well, I just want to thank Drs. Helgen and Dr. And Fischer for joining us tonight, and Betsy for getting us all connected. Really appreciate it. We will be doing another session tomorrow night with Dr. Flannery. I hope folks on tonight, it sounds like folks are connected to Growing Up Healthy or to Marvel de Cantos. Please keep the questions coming, and my sense is that Northfield Hospital and Clinic staff are really eager to make sure people feel confident in getting the vaccine, so are eager to talk with folks and talk through those questions. Really, really appreciate your time tonight. So thank you so much for that. So as Cherie said, those that want to stay on and maybe talk through the website and talk through how to sign on the wait list, we could do a share screen, and Cherise and I are happy to stay on and do that with folks. Any other final comments?
Oh, it has been my pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. And I think the main thing is maybe we could find a way that if people had questions that weren't addressed, they could get them to you, Sandy. Sandy could send them to us, to Betsy. I mean, we would be happy to address it, come back. We can do this all by email these days. I'd be so happy to do that. I find that the more we know, that I find as I talk with my patients, my neighbors, the more people know about vaccines, it's just there's so much positive reasons to get it. So I would be happy to do any of that.
Sounds awesome.
Same here. Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if folks have questions that weren't addressed, just like the doctor said, let Growing Up Healthy or Mar know. We'll definitely get those questions answered for you. Thanks, everyone. We'll hang tight here. Those that want to stay on, please do, and we'll talk through that waitlist sign up. Why don't I share the homepage here?
Que
and
ella
then,
va a poner lo que es el website que va directamente a la lista de espera en español.
see that?
O pueden llegar, como ella está diciendo, aquí arriba, donde dice COVID-19 Vaccine Information. Van a hacer clic ahí. Ok, y van a bajar y van a hacer clic. Aquí están las 5 idiomas. Entonces hacen clic ahí. Ok, y ahí empiezan. Van a poner el mes, la fecha y el año. Y después ahí mismo, no tienen que poner la edad, ese sale automáticamente. Y cuando, por ejemplo, yo puedo poner el mío. Si se deja.
So, Cherie, should I enter something?
Maybe you do
here?
it. Yeah. So you pick that, like, yeah, just pick a date and then make it like 50 or something. Okay, so ella puso que tenías esa fecha y salió 57. Ahí tienen que ser residente de Minnesota, Wisconsin. No residente, mucha gente dice, no soy residente legal. Eso no tiene nada que ver aquí, nada más que vives en Minnesota o Wisconsin. ¿Ok? Si las personas tienen miedo de decir si soy residente o legal o no, eso no tiene nada que ver. Aquí van a poner nombre y apellido, si tienen 2 apellidos, que añaden las 2 apellidos, la dirección, y si tienen más, usualmente solo es la primera, ciudad, Northfield o cualquier ciudad que viven, que es dentro de nuestra condado, y hasta Lakeville y Farmington también, y parte de hasta Lonsdale, y eso están incluidos. Tienen que poner dirección correo electrónico. Si no tienen dirección de correo electrónico, nada más, could you put in there X? Yep, that right here. 2X y pongan eso y tienen que confirmarlo. Si no tienen dirección de correo electrónico o no quieren poner, nada más, ahí está la dirección que dice si no tiene una dirección de correo electrónico, utilice. Porque mucha gente no tiene correo electrónico. Después, teléfono de casa, tu teléfono móvil o celular pueden ser el mismo número. Y yo recomiendo que ponen llamada telefónico. Pusieron texto porque pues aquí pueden mandar texto de la sistema Luma, pero nosotros, yo y Rachel personalmente vamos a estar hablando a las personas en la lista de espera en español. Vamos a estar llamando personalmente ahora, apenas esto empezó hace una semana, que nosotros estamos hablando a las personas de habla español para poner la cita de la vacuna después que están en la lista de espera. Aquí ya van a tocar sí o no si tienen alguna condición médica. Can you put yes? Ok, y aquí van a apuntar si tienen alguno de esos condiciones médicas. Y solo tienen que 1. Después de 1 ya no puedes, sabes que no he tenido nadie que ha tenido más que 1 todavía. Pero we want to try to put like the diabetes and then another one like obesity. O sí pueden poner más que uno, ¿ok? Y de ahí ya no tienes que poner, la segunda pregunta era si era trabajador esencial, pero como ya se calificó aquí debajo de condiciones médicas, ya no vas a ver la pregunta de condiciones médicas. Sandy, can you go back up and put no now? Ok, si pones no sobre condición médica, entonces sale la pregunta si cumples con las pautas esenciales para los trabajadores. Can you put sí there? Y ahí hay una lista de cosas que según son trabajadores esenciales. Pero si usted, por ejemplo, tengo personas que dicen que hacen housekeeping, limpieza en alguna fábrica o limpieza como de casas o limpieza en algún lugar, aquí abajo en el otro pones eso. Porque esto por alguna razón en la primera lista que decidieron acá, no es uno, pero sí es esencial porque pues obviamente trabajan en esos lugares, todos esos que están listados arriba. O si tienen otro trabajo que crees o que le han dicho que es esencial, ahí la pueden apuntar. Y de ahí cuando elegimos las personas, tenemos un prólogo para escogerlos. Pero si son uno de esos, ya cuando recibimos la lista, la vamos a hablar a la gente. Ok, y después, we can go down a little bit now. Tiempo aproximado necesario para viajar al hospital si le llaman. Eso significa, por ejemplo, el viernes tenemos una clínica de vacunas y tienen 6 vacunas disponibles que las tienen que usar porque una vez abiertas, una vez puestas en las jeringas, las tienen que poner a las personas o tirarlas, que no hemos tenido que hacer todavía y no quieren. Entonces, buscan personas o van a la lista de espera y hablan a las personas. Por eso la pregunta en cuánto tiempo puedes llegar si te llegan a llamar. Y ahí puedes escoger de los 4. No importa si es 10 minutos o 30, para ellos es igual porque siempre estamos aquí como 1 hora más de cuando cierre la clínica. Ok, aquí necesita servicios de intérpretes y por favor, si creen que necesitan servicios de intérpretes o será más cómodos recibirlos, pongan que sí. Si vienen y por alguna razón uno de nosotros no estamos, tenemos los iPads o puedes traer otra persona con usted o pueden informar, pero hay una hoja, un waiver. Si no usan nosotros, yo o Rachel, o tenemos otros que vienen a veces también, los que están trabajando ese día, o no usen el iPad, tienen que firmar el waiver. Si traen otra persona arriba de la edad de 18 años. ¿Ok? Y esto es para más que todo la gente mayor o que tienen discapacidades. Queremos saber si necesitas ayuda para salir de su vehículo o entrar al edificio. Si no, no tienen que tocar nada ahí. Okay, go back. And then tienes que marcar estoy de acuerdo. ¿Ok? Y después van a tocar enviar formulario. Y a veces sale esa cosa del iRobot que dice que sale, a veces va directamente y a veces sale, escoge las fotos que tienen carros. No sé si le han visto en alguna otra cosa anteriormente. Es un poquito difícil escribirlo, describirlo, pero es como otro para asegurar que no es un robot. Como por ejemplo nos sale a nosotros a cada rato porque cada día estamos usando la misma página de nuestras mismas computadoras, entonces sale a cada rato. Sí, entonces si estás escribiendo una persona, 3 personas en su familia, puede ser que te sale esa segunda seguridad antes que se envíen el formulario. We can't really send that now. No podemos enviarlo ahorita porque no hemos dado el resto de la información. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿O está claro?
Nice work, Charisse. No questions. That's impressive.
Ok. Pero quieres que sepa y para la comunidad nos pueden hablar directamente, pueden para ayudar a las personas a inscribir en el website o si hay personas en su grupo que ayudan personas a inscribirse en el website. Pero el prólogo ahorita es que antes era un poquito diferente, pero ahora han puesto que tienen que estar en la lista de espera y después le hablamos por teléfono.
Sandy, would you mind putting that page back up, just the home page, and we can show where that toggle button is at the bottom where people can translate the whole website?
Oh, ok, que va a poner el sitio web regular del hospital para que pueden ver dónde es al fin de la página, the bottom of the page. Para que cualquier página en que están, nada más hacen clic en español y toda esa página se traduce ya a español. Pero el problema es que aunque teníamos la lista de, ahí está, ahí ahora sale ahí español, pero en la primera página no pudimos poner la lista de espera original porque algo sobre lo que son los sistemas. Por eso tuvimos que construir otra lista, aparte de la de inglés, en las 5 idiomas.
And also, would you mind, sorry for interrupting, would you mind scrolling down just a little bit, Sandy, and show where there's a FAQ on that page too that's got a lot of information in it?
Ok, hay muchas informaciones también sobre las diferentes vacunas ahí al fin de la página para que las personas puedan leer a su gusto.
Am I showing the right thing?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Any other questions?
Que hemos trabajado muy duro en tratar de traducir todo lo que es del COVID.
Cherise, ¿las personas de Faribault también pueden agarrar la vacuna en Northfield?
Claro, claro. Cualquier persona de lo que es, the question was if people from Faribault could get the vaccination in Northfield. And I said, definitely. Todo lo que es lo que es el, Betsy, do you know the whole area?
Yeah, people, anybody from in Minnesota or Wisconsin can sign up on the wait list. Right now, we're serving people in our service area. So
Okay,
all of
what's our service area?
all the communities where we have clinics is where we've started. So Northfield, Lonsdale, Faribault, Farmington, Lakeville.
Okay. ¿Estaban escuchando a ella? ¿Pueden escuchar a ella? Que dijo Lonsdale, Faribault, Lakeville, Farmington, todo el área donde están nuestras clínicas. Faribault, Lonsdale, Farmington, Lakeville, Northfield, todos pueden inscribirse. Actualmente cualquier persona de Minnesota y Wisconsin puede inscribirse en nuestra website, pero vamos a estar en nuestro servicio local primero y de ahí vamos a expandir más adelante. ¿Está claro eso?
One last piece of information that we're sharing with folks is about the state website, the vaccine connector. Do you, Jen and Natalia, do you guys want information on that also?
Que una cosa que estamos compartiendo es que hay otro lugar para el estado de Minnesota que se llama Vaccine Connector, conector de vacunas. ¿Quieren esa información también? O si acaso por alguna razón alguien no puede recibirlo en nuestro servicio local, la pueden dar a alguien afuera que según es un lugar donde te ponen su información y te conectan donde pueden recibir la vacuna. Yes, they would like that. Oh, you got it.
Can someone please also share the Northfield website? I think people are asking, where can they find what was just shared?
I think
Threw it in the
way
chat,
up at the very
Natalia.
top.
I just
Way
threw it
up
in
at the top
too.
of the chat. It's go to the very top of the chat, arriba del chat. La primera cosa que Sandy puso es el website de la lista de espera en español. La primerita cosa que salió en el chat. Pero podemos ponerlo otra vez.
I think it got lost because people are commenting.
Okay. Sandy, could you put that up again? That's the, I
The
don't know
one
if I
that's
can-
directly to the wait list.
Yep, directly
Yep.
to the wait list in Spanish. It was the
Perfect.
very first
Yep.
thing you posted.
Yep, just put it in.
Okay.
So here's just a little, if you're ready for it, a little information about Vaccine Connector. This is run by the state of Minnesota. Everybody who lives in Minnesota who's 16 and older can register there, and it will give you information about other vaccine options around you.
Ok, que dice que todas las personas 16 años y mayor, es un poquito más de información sobre el Vaccine Connector que Betsy puso en el chat, el sitio web, que todos pueden registrarse ahí y se sale donde pueden recibir la vacuna. ¿Alguna pregunta más?
Sí, alguien dijo que sí es recomendable que una persona vaya a ponerse la vacuna sola o recomendable que vaya con alguien más.
Okay, I'm wondering if that's something, they're saying if it's recommended if the people should go alone for their vaccine or if they should bring somebody with them.
I can answer that a little bit. It's
Okay.
okay to go alone. Some people, for example, older people will have a caregiver bring them. If somebody needs assistance to come through for their vaccine appointment, we ask just one person to accompany them.
Ok, lo que es que puedes venir sola para la vacuna, pero obviamente si hay alguien que quiere traer a alguien más con ellos, pueden. Y si hay alguien que necesita ayuda, que está en silla de ruedas o necesita ayuda, estamos limitando a una persona que venga con esa persona para ayudarles a movilizarse por la sesión de vacuna.